Hey folks, this is Pat Quinn with the JoBlo Movie Network welcoming film fans worldwide for another round of Show Me the Sequel. As always, we're focusing on a genre film that never got the follow-up it perhaps deserved. I'll start with a quick recap, share some behind-the-scenes stories, and then pitch my concept for a sequel. So, if you're ready to shake the pillars of heaven, let's get to it, because today we're talking about one of my all-time favorite flicks, Big Trouble in Little China. Released in the summer of 1986, Big Trouble in Little China was a high-budget studio release that bombed at the box office, but over time has gone on to become a much-loved cult classic. Even now, 35 years later, it's still unlike any other film around. If you put Sam Raimi's Army of Darkness, the original Magnificent Seven, Escape from New York, and some Hong Kong grindhouse horror like Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires or Five Deadly Venoms into a blender, you might be able to recreate that special mojo for a sequel, but we'll get to that later. First, let's take a closer look at the film itself. Kurt Russell plays Jack Burton, a truck driver who's just arrived in San Francisco's Chinatown. He spends the night gambling with friends, including Wang Chi, played by Dennis Dunn. The next morning, he gives his friend a ride to the airport, so Wang can greet his bride-to-be Mao Yin, who's flying in from China. Also at the airport is Gracie Law, played by Kim Cattrall. She's there to meet a friend on the same flight. As the plane disembarks, members of a Chinese street gang known as the Lords of Death kidnap Mao Yin, with plans to sell her to a local brothel. Jack and Wang follow them in Jack's truck, and the chase leads them into the back alleys of Chinatown. Men armed with swords emerge from the shadows, and our heroes find themselves smack dab in the center of a fight between two rival gangs, the Chang Sing and the Wing Kong. That's when things start to get a little weird. Amidst a burst of wind and lightning, the three storms arrive, three mighty warriors who can control the elements. With their help, the Wing Kong quickly overwhelm their rivals. Jack tries to drive his truck out of the chaos, but his way is blocked by Lo Pan, an ancient Chinese magician who shoots blue light out of his eyes. Our heroes escape on foot back to Wang's restaurant, where they're met by Gracie Law, her reporter friend Margot, Wang's friend Eddie Lee, played by Donald Lee. Also on hand is local tour bus driver and resident authority on all things magic and mystical, Egg Shen, played by the amazing and awesome Victor Wong. They come up with a plan to rescue Mao Yin and get Jack's truck back, but Egg Shen warns them that there is more to this than just kidnapping. Lo Pan, played by the equally amazing and awesome James Hong, is cursed to spend eternity in the body of a crippled old man. To break that curse, he must marry and then sacrifice a green-eyed girl to Qing Dai, the god of the East. And guess what? Mao Yin has green eyes. The rescue mission goes south, and Jack and Wang are captured. Gracie, Margot, and Eddie try to save them, and eventually the entire group makes an escape through the underground sewers. But during the getaway, a giant monkey creature captures Gracie and takes her to Lo Pan. When the magician sees that Gracie also has green eyes, he decides to marry both women, but he will sacrifice Gracie and keep Mao Yin as his bride. Jack, Wang, and Eddie regroup with the surviving Chang Sing members. Egg Shen passes around a potent potion which gives them the courage to head back to Lo Pan's headquarters. They break in and manage to stop the marriage ceremony. A wild battle breaks out, things explode, men bounce off trampolines, and a big floating eyeball gets shish kebabbed with a scimitar. The three storms are finally defeated, and Jack kills Lo Pan with a well-aimed throwing knife. Wang Chi and Mao Yin are reunited. Margot, the reporter, hooks up with Eddie Lee, and Jack gets his truck back. The film ends with Jack heading out on the road, not knowing that the monkey creature has stowed away in the back of his rig. A hint of things to come? Who knows? Okay, that's the basic plot. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? What that Wikipedia-cribbed synopsis does not mention are the amazing Chinatown sets built on the Fox backlot, the awesome old-school martial arts fight scenes choreographed by James Liu, dialogue so intentionally cheesy it must have been written on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. And best of all is Kurt Russell, not just channeling John Wayne, he's channeling Las Vegas icon Rich Little doing an impersonation of John Wayne. Here's an example.
You just listen to the old Pork Chop Express here now and take his advice on a dark and stormy night when the lightning's crashing and the thunder's rolling and the rain's coming down in sheets thick as lead.
How did all this kung fu craziness come together, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. The original screenplay was still set in San Francisco, but back in the 1880s when the city by the bay was known as the Barbary Coast. That script combined Chinese fantasy elements with the Old West, which actually sounds pretty cool. But then I remember sitting through Cowboys and Aliens. Maybe not so much. First-time writers Gary Goldman and David Weinstein sold the script to 20th Century Fox. But the realistic 1880s dialogue wasn't cutting it with the suits upstairs, so veteran script doctor W.D. Richter was brought in to give it a major overhaul. This is the same man who 2 years earlier had written and directed The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, a movie even wackier than Big Trouble in Little China. Meanwhile, director John Carpenter was riding high on the success of Starman, which had netted Jeff Bridges an Oscar nomination. Fox sent him the revised draft for Big Trouble in Little China, which Richter had updated to present day. In fact, outside of the basic concept, it was a brand new script, which was a good thing, since John Carpenter had read and hated the original version. Fox was eager to rush the film into production so they wouldn't have to compete with Eddie Murphy's upcoming Christmas release, The Golden Child. That film had similar themes, and while truly god-awful, it was a major hit. To paraphrase John Carpenter, how many adventure films dealing with Chinese mysticism have been released by the major studios in the past 20 years? For two of them to come along at the exact same time is more than mere coincidence. In fact, this happens all the time. The industry term is twin films. This happens when two movies with similar plots come out the same year, often within months of each other. Remember back in 2016 when we got two different live-action versions of The Jungle Book? And in 1998 we got not one but two out-of-control asteroid flicks, Armageddon and Deep Impact. The year before that, both Dante's Peak and Volcano ooze lava all over the box office, but my favorite example happened in 1995 with the dueling drag queen epics, The Adventures of Priscilla Queen of the Desert up against Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. Sometimes, the silver screen gods just like to mess with us. Carpenter agreed to the tight schedule and began casting the film. He and Kurt Russell had already done 3 projects together, the television movie Elvis, Escape from New York, and The Thing. Besides being friends, they both had the same take on the character of Jack Burton, a guy who thinks he's Indiana Jones, but he's really just a well-intentioned blowhard. He often makes mistakes, stumbles through the wrong door, and in the final climactic fight, he gets knocked out by a piece of falling cement. Jackie Chan was considered for the role of Wang Chi, but his 2 previous American features, The Big Brawl and The Protector, had not done well, so he passed. John Carpenter had seen Dennis Dunn in Michael Cimino's The Year of the Dragon and offered him the role. Ironically, even though the actor was a relative unknown, his character is the real hero of Big Trouble in Little China. Wang Chi does most of the fighting, with Jack Burton playing the stumbling sidekick. It's a fascinating dynamic, but unfortunately, one of the main reasons the film tanked. American audiences like their heroes and their movie stars to play things a bit more traditional. The film previewed well, but it was a commercial failure, only grossing $11 million against a $25 million budget. The studio had marketed a fantasy martial arts comedy as a straight-up action film, and most moviegoers didn't know what to make of it. The fact that James Cameron's film Aliens opened 2 weeks later was the last nail in the coffin.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Over the years, like so many other cult films, including John Carpenter's They Live and The Thing, Big Trouble was rediscovered on VHS tape and late-night cable. Characters in the massively successful Mortal Kombat video games were inspired by the films. Director Taika Waititi has said that Big Trouble in Little China was a major influence on the look and tone of his film Thor Ragnarok. But my favorite example of Big Trouble in Little China's ongoing popularity was a parody of the hit song Gangnam Style. The 2012 video spoof even featured a cameo by James Hong doing it Lopan style. Never seen it? Well, here's a little taste.
Yes, sir, the check is in the mail.
Oh, I'm not insane. I kidnap Chinese girls as soon as they get off the plane. Cross-checking iris colors till I match a creamy jade.
Okay, now we get down to brass tacks. Were there ever plans to make a sequel to Big Trouble in Little China? Yes, there was. And do I have my own pitch for a sequel? Yes, I do. But first, a little backstory. In 1995, scriptwriter Chip Proser was hired by Fox to write a sequel that was intended to be a TV movie on the Fox network. The plot involved the search for an ancient Chinese puzzle, and the only returning character was Egg Shen. At the time, Victor Wong was still alive and acting, a highlight being his role as the proprietor of Chang's Market in the original Tremors. But for reasons unknown, Fox dropped the project. Then in 2015, Fox announced they were greenlighting a remake that would star Dwayne Johnson. Zach Stentz and Ashley Edward Miller were hired to write the script. Their previous credits included X-Men First Class and the original Thor movie. But as they were completing a first draft, Dwayne Johnson and Kurt Russell were shooting The Fate of the Furious. The two actors got to chatting and decided it would be great to do a sequel, rather than a remake, and bring Russell back as an older Jack Burton to star alongside Johnson. But it was all a moot point because Disney bought Fox, and once again the project was dropped. On a much different note, John Carpenter managed to get not one but two sequels completed. Not films, these were comic books for Boom Studios. The first series picked up the story just a few days after the film ended. Jack finds the monkey creature stowed away in his truck, and it becomes his new sidekick. Anyone else having a deja vu with Clint Eastwood and Clyde the orangutan in Any Which Way But Loose? Then in 2018, Carpenter wrote another comic book called Old Man Jack. In that series, a 60-year-old Jack Burton finds himself teaming up with Lopan to defeat Ching Dai, who has broken the barriers between Earth and the infinite hells and declared himself king of everything there is to be king of. Those are all cool ideas, but now it's my turn. Before I start, I have to tell you that the more I researched Chinese mythology, the more impressed I was with the script for Big Trouble in Little China. When you start reading about the 5 elements, the 10 legendary swords, and the 18 levels of hell, it can all be a little overwhelming. I decided to keep Dwayne Johnson as the star, not only because in theory he is still attached to the project, but also he's the #1 American movie star in China. So, Dwayne Johnson plays Brett Simpson, a retired football player who is engaged to Ming Yu, the daughter of Wang Chi, played once again by Dennis Dunn. Brett and Wang Chi are planning to open a restaurant together. Donald Lee is back as Eddie, who's now a real estate agent. They're buying an old building that for decades was Lin's import-export company. Eddie brings them to meet Mr. Lin so they can sign the papers and get the keys. Long retired and over 100 years old, Mr. Lin is taken with Ming Yu, who has green eyes just like her mother. Hanging around his neck is a jade medallion with a strange symbol on it. Mr. Lin agrees to sign the papers, but only if Ming Yu takes the medallion as a gift and promises to always wear it. Afterwards, they meet up with Ming Yu's brother Jimmy to celebrate and explore the building. The character of Jimmy is an opportunity to cast a younger Chinese actor for the action scenes, just as Dennis Dunn did in the original. My suggestion would be Daniel Wu, who American audiences know from the 2018 version of Tomb Raider and 2016's Warcraft. They pop open the champagne and start exploring the building. Eddie tells them it was originally built by the mysterious Wandan Triad, who supposedly ran a brothel and an opium den. Wandering off on her own, Ming Yu finds an old freight elevator with the same symbol on the doors that's on the jade medallion. The down button begins to glow green, as does the medallion, and the door slides open. She calls out to let the others know, but curiosity gets the best of her, and she steps inside. The door is abruptly shut, and the elevator heads down. Brett and the others rush up as the elevator returns, now empty. They take it down, and when the doors open, they find themselves in an industrial basement full of steam pipes and coal bins. There's no sign of Ming Yu. Then, 2 giant men appear dressed in Chinese robes, but these aren't normal men. One has the head of an ox, and the other a horse. They grab Eddie and start dragging him towards a massive broiler. The doors swing open and flames pour out. Then just as suddenly, they release him. The group scrambles back to the elevator and head up to the main floor. Jimmy wants to get some guns and head back down there, but Wang Chi thinks this is beyond them, and they need a special kind of help. He leads them to a local Chinese herbal medicine store. The apothecary who runs it is Huan Shen, who was Egg Shen's brother. Huan Shen is also an expert on Chinese mysticism. He's heard stories that the Wandan Society were obsessed with discovering the secret of immortality, and based on what Brett and the others saw, Huan Shen thinks he knows how they plan to find it. In Chinese mythology, there are 18 levels of hell, one for each type of sin. But unlike the Christian concept of hell, souls aren't damned forever. A mythical old lady known as Granny Meng keeps a cauldron brewing of the broth of oblivion. One shot of that, and you can reincarnate back to our world and start all over again. And we're talking some messed up hells here. This isn't just fire and brimstone and a guy poking you with a pitchfork. Let me list off a few of my favorites. Hell of the cauldrons of oil, hell of dismemberment, hell of tongue ripping, hell of scissors, and here's a real crowd pleaser, hell of the blood pool. Somehow, the Wandan Society created a path to the 18 hells beneath the building so they could reach Granny Meng and get their hands on the broth of oblivion. That would mean that the demons who attacked Eddie were Gozu and Mezu, the guardians of hell. They released him when they realized he wasn't a dead soul. That means Ming Yu got past them as well, and she is either lost or trapped somewhere amongst the 18 hells. As they argue about their next move, there's a knock at the door. Wang Chi tells the others that they'll need help, so he's called in an old favor. The door is open, and it's Kurt Russell back as Jack Burton. When Jack quit driving a rig, he opened an auto repair shop in Oakland with money he borrowed from Wang Chi. Now he's here to pay back the favor. Jack says the best plan is just to go back down there and see what happens, especially if Wan Shen can brew up some of Egg's special potion. Brett, Jack, Wang, and Jimmy head down to the basement. They get past the Guardians and find a staircase that leads to the first hell. The demons there assume they're lost souls and attack. Jack and the others fight their way past them, and not finding Ming Yu, head down to the next level. They eventually reach the 18th hell, the Hell of Mills, where those who have misused their power are crushed in a stone mill. That's where they finally find Ming Yu, but she's not alone. This is the hell where Lo Pan was banished to. It turns out he was the leader of the Wandan Society, and Mr. Lin is the last surviving member. Lin knew the Jade Medallion would lead Ming Yu to the elevator and eventually to the Ancient Wizard, who uses the medallion to escape the Hell of Mills and takes Ming Yu with him. Jack and the others catch up just as Lo Pan is about to drink the broth of oblivion. But Granny Meng is more powerful than Lo Pan realizes, and the two wizards battle until she casts a powerful spell that sends him back to the Hell of Mills. Granny Meng guides the others back to the elevator, and our exhausted heroes head up to the ground floor. The film ends with a for sale sign posted at the Import-Export building. A wizened old man's hand wearing Chinese jewelry reaches in and replaces the sign with one that says sold. Then fade to black as we hear Lo Pan's cackling laugh. And there you go. That's my pitch for a sequel to Big Trouble in Little China. I hope you liked it, and thanks for watching the show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Horror Videos channel, tell your friends who dig this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company, and we appreciate all your support. So until next time, thanks again.